facilitator for the workshop is Prof. Mashabela. He's been with UNISA for some years, colleagues, and he's an expert in terms of research, colleagues. Please engage, and let me just officially open the session and welcome you, Prof, to the session.
So what we'll try to cover today is really to finish the literature review, talk a little bit of hypothesis, and see if we can have enough to discuss variables. And then we close our day like that. But then let's go back to what we spoke about last time, that science is very, very important for what you are about to do. When you do a mini dissertation, a proposal, or anything like that, you're setting a science. If this was in the food industry, we would say you're producing something that we must eat and not be fearful that there's poison in it. So when you look at the scientific story, we have now drawn a clear line that you are looking into the systematic observation, control, and replication, just as principles or elements that differentiate science from non-science. So basically, that's what we are all about. So throughout the intervention, that's what our focus is, to move everybody to move each one of us into that space, so that from time to time when you engage, you remember, oh, by the way, mine must be systematic. Oh, by the way, mine must have control. By the way, mine must be reproduced. Just so that at least we know that you are not the only one who can follow that process and come up with the results that are different from this. I liked what I saw with Dr. DeBasis in terms of how he structures the proposal. And this doesn't have to be for thesis. It can also be for masters. It can also be for honors, because you see a mental map, a picture, as they said, it also tells 1,000 stories. So we are actually trying to create a picture that when you look at it, this is what you should be able to see. Now, this is another way of trying to simplify what we are talking about. But because we are talking about literature review, which in our chapter or our steps, it's another important element of research. We look at the theoretical framework, we look at the current state of knowledge, we look at the research gaps and the key concepts and definitions. Now, before I go ahead and run the whole show by myself, let me just understand. When we talk about definition, what is your, when we talk about concept, definition of concept, Thabiso, what comes to mind?
For my research proposal.
When we use, when in this context, when in research, there's always definition of concepts or concept definition. Now, what I'm asking is, in your mind, right? What comes to your mind when you talk about definition of concepts? What do you think about?
I think maybe it's trying to explain the purpose of the research, like the main core. What is it about, or what it might be focusing on? That's what comes to me.
No, I'm talking about definition of concepts. You said what comes to mind is?
The core purpose of my research.
Core purpose, oh, okay. All right. That's what comes to mind for you. When we say concept definitions, what comes across your mind?
I assume it would be a definition of ideas, theories that one would make reference to or be using.
Oh, yes. But maybe let me push a little bit and see. How do we define, okay, not we, how do you define, Veronica, for us, youth? What is youth?
How would I define the youth?
Yeah.
I would say it's persons. I'm not going to put a gender, but I'd say it's persons between a certain age. So in South Africa, it would be up until 35.
It's a person.
It's persons between and then specific ages.
What are those ages? That's what I'm looking for.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure where it starts, but I know where it ends. And it ends
Okay.
at 35.
Where does it end?
At
For you.
35.
Okay, so it's anybody that ends at 35 will be a youth. Well, because you don't know where it starts, right? It's fine. Koketo, what is a youth?
Well, Prof, you say a youth, and I'm not sure whether you're referring to human beings or ideas, or so. I mean, if you are you referring to youthfulness as a concept?
Yeah, how do you
But-
define
but-
a youth
yeah.
person then?
Yes, and an elderly person.
It's a what?
An elderly person or an elderly person. So somebody who is not defined as an adult. Yes, I am. Yeah,
That's a very
it's a difficult one, Prof.
that's a
because
very
it's-
interesting definition of a youth.
it's so it could be, if you're talking about a youthful idea, then we are talking about newness, right? Well, in my view, we're talking
Okay.
about newness. So a youthful person would be a person full of newness, whether it's energy, because you actually find young people even in older than 35 maybe, but
Okay.
they're still
Wow. An
young.
interesting definition. Okay, we'll come back to that. No problem. Promise. What is a youth? We'll come back to that, Gogo. Thanks.
Okay.
When I say youth, what comes to mind?
Okay, good evening and good
Good
evening.
evening.
Yeah, I think in terms of age, youth, it's somebody who's over his or her teen years, which is, I think, from the age of 20. Somebody's between the age of 20 and 35 in terms of
Okay.
age.
20
Yeah,
to
so
35.
yeah.
That's what comes to mind to you. Tabiso.
Yeah, thank you.
Tabiso, I'm back with you. Because we are on the definition of concepts. Go ahead, Tabiso. Youth.
Yes. So what's the question about youth?
I'm saying how would you define youth?
I'm not sure if it will be different from what my colleagues have already said. Because from my understanding, are you taking from when I think of youth at the top of my head?
Yeah, like if
Yeah.
somebody says to you youth now, what comes to your mind?
I'll probably think of any person who's under the age of 35. Is qualified
Under
as
the
a
age
youth.
of 30. Oh, so you under the age of 35.
Yeah, is qualified as a youth person.
Is there any starting point, or are you also on the ending point?
No, starting point is 18, sorry, because the moment
Oh,
I
is it
say
18?
everyone, then even
Oh,
a toddler is probably be classified as a youth. But yeah,
Oh,
between the
okay.
age
So
of
you
18
okay?
and
You
25.
also you've got 18, and remember, we just had from Ikateko 20 as well. So yours it will be 18 to 35.
Yeah, legally, yeah, between 18 and 25.
Okay, that's fine. Let's take maybe the last one. I'm just taking my guess here, Shamida. When somebody says youth for you, what comes to mind?
Without going too deeply into what my colleagues have said, when somebody says to me the word youth, it is in the context of a legal kind of definition, which for me would be from the ages of 13 to 21.
13 to 21.
To 21. And I know that the legal age has now been changed to 18, but for me, conceptually, it would be a teenager up until the age of 21.
Thank you. Now, do you realize what this means now? Because just listening to you defining the youth, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, if I were to use all these different definitions, right? In other words, 13 to 21, 18 to 35, 20 to 35, not an adult or not elderly, or somebody that starts, I don't know where, but ends at 35. Do you see what that has done? It has now created a need for me to understand, at the end of the day then, what is a youth? Conceptually, when you define it if I read your research work and I come across youth and you're using it maybe in a document that I'm going through on your report, I would be confused unless you have a concept, you have defined a concept for me. Now, I can't say any one of you is wrong, but I'm just thinking to myself, then eventually what becomes a youth? Now, that is what we mean when you say concepts must be defined as part of literature, because otherwise my reference point and my perspective might be wrong. I would look at legal age 13 to 21, and I'm thinking, is this youth? Or I may look at 18 to 35 and I'm asking, is this? So it is important to, as part of your proposal, to have concepts defined. Why do you have concepts defined? So that when I go through your work, I'm able to relate to it. Otherwise, I would be coming from a different perspective and I may actually use wrong judgment on what I see in front of me. That's basically what we are talking about when you say concepts must be defined. So you are the one who knows what you're dealing with. And therefore, if you don't define the concept, something might mean different things to different people. I was looking at the youth and I'm saying, okay, what is the definition of the youth? Now, when you go through different sources, I mean, according to Koketso, is not an adult. According to Thabiso, is 18 to 35. According to Mikateko, is anything from 0 to 35. According to Shamida. So you see what we are sitting with. Now we're sitting with different definitions. What then becomes our operational definition? So in other words, when we read all these, what then becomes our definition that we are using operationally in our report? Maybe let me come back to Koketso. So Koketso, having listened to all this literature that we conducted, we surveyed, and we now read, what then becomes the definition of youth?
Well, then if we take the general view from everybody, it seems to be age-based. They've taken the age definition, and I think somebody mentioned the legal age. So the general consensus seems to be age, whereas I think that youth could go beyond humanity and age.
So you see what you are doing now is that, and I'm using this loosely, don't get it wrong. Yes. You are now creating a theoretical understanding of youth that much as maybe you are saying, much as it could be understood from an age point of view, in other words, from 0, 18, there could also be other considerations when you look at youth, which could be something else. So you're building a theory. Yes. That theory could either be, it's what you are saying. You said, look, this is what I'm reading, and these are my literature, but I can see that there is a gap in how youth is understood. For example, it looks like it's only understood from this perspective, and therefore I see a gap. Perhaps the gap that you are seeing is there has to be an expansion of an understanding of youth just beyond an age. Maybe that's where you are going with this discussion, right? So in research, that's what you're doing when you do literature review. You read and you have a good understanding of the environment, and you say, where are the gaps? Gaps can be theoretical. I mean, there can be any different type of gaps that you read and you come across and you say, this is the gap that I want to close. In other words, this is what my knowledge gap for me that I'm picking up on the discipline is, and this is what I want to attend to. That makes sense. I hope it's making sense.
It does, Prof. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm sharing this with everybody to say, if somebody was to say define, you first have to define it according to all of us. You know, here is a source, there is the source, and everywhere else there's a source. Now you pull that together and you distill that information and say, for everybody to understand you, this is what it is, right? And there's nothing wrong in saying, no, I think it's 13 to 35, maybe according to this source, maybe according to that source is 40, maybe according to this government is that. So you've now scanned the whole environment on what the concept is. And then you say, look, much as I can agree that age is a factor or is a consideration, I think there's this element that has not been taken care of. And for my purpose, therefore, I am going to look at that. So you can then say, you know, there's 35 everywhere, but I'm going to focus on those that are 20 to 30. So in other words, you are now saying, you are well aware that the definition of a youth is set in some other sources of information that you're relying on. But for your purpose, when I see youth in your work, is anybody between 20 and 30, which then means you are now looking only at a certain cohort of a group of young people that you're focusing on. So nobody would then say, yeah, but when I'm 35, I'm still youth. You have taken that into consideration, but you zoom into that which for you is necessary for your purpose. So that's what we mean when you say you need to define concepts, because it is only you as a researcher who know and understand the concept that you are using in your research report, so that when I read it, if I see anything youth, because you've defined it at the beginning of your work, I'm able to say anything I see in here is not going beyond 35 or is not going over 30, because you've kept it to 20 to 30. I mean, as an example. So it's important to consider that in your literature review. Define concepts. Define concepts as in tell us what the concepts mean in your own understanding, but obviously you'll use an understanding being guided by literature. But I want you to remember that there is a reason why you have to conduct literature or you have to review literature. It's very, very important for you as a research student, but also as a researcher, just to understand there is no research work that you can do, whether qualitative, quantitative, or mixed methods, without conducting a literature review. What then makes a difference? And that is the discussion we keep on going, back and forth about. What makes a difference is if you are using qualitative, it's different way of conducting literature than when you are using quantitative. Simply put, we can say, if you use qualitative, you don't have to extensively do literature review. Not that you don't have to conduct it, you have to conduct it, but it's not the basis that you should really go extensive about it. It doesn't mean don't do it. Whilst when you do quantitative, it is expected of you to really have an extensive literature review. The purpose for that is that you need to share results of other studies that are closely related to the ones you're doing. So in other words, whatever you are studying, some researchers, some authors, some writers have already studied that. So you need to consider that environment into your space. So you have to do that in all the studies that you're doing. So hopefully as we interact, we don't interact, and then the next thing you disappear, for example, and you come back to, because you need to put this into some kind of practicality of the work that you are doing, just to make sure that at least you have done some literature. Maybe you've got this question or that question. Otherwise, you may find yourself not having put a literature review by the end of the discussion. It also relates your study to your larger, as we said, ongoing dialogue in filling gaps that exist in literature. There is no research, all over the world that would not provide for some gaps that you can fill. It is there for this reason that we will, when you read any research report, at the end, it will also point you to some further research studies that you can do in relation to that area of investigation. Because research is not ending as in, oh, now we have concluded, therefore nothing to be researched further. So you need to just also use that as an advice and guidance on further research areas. So it's important to read research reports, that are done by others, because they can also give you a lot of ideas on your research work that you want to undertake. It is a summary of the major studies on the research problem. So again, what it does is, as you read the work of others, researchers written down, you are now able to see what are the major studies that have been done on the problem that I myself am interested in. And yours might just be filling a particular gap. It could be, as we said, a theoretical gap, a methodological gap, whatever gap that you're picking up, and say, well, there seems to have been maybe an issue of methodology here, so mine will just be to make sure that I build on it. So there is always, studies that are major that have been done in the problem, but obviously, as we said, there are always opportunities that you could exploit in your own research work that we can discuss in this platform. What it does is what is its uses? It does integrate what others have done. So that's the use that you get on literature. So when you read other people's work, also look at how does the integration happens. This one has defined youth as 18 to 35. This other source has defined youth as 13 to 35. This one has defined youth as 13 to 21. What are the commonalities? What are the differences? What are the similarities? So you're looking at that and it's like, but why is it that this is defined differently by authors? But then there's also points within which there are similarities and areas where you could converge. That's important, because it doesn't mean you read or you conduct literature just for the wrongs or for the incorrect argument. You can also look at, well, there are similarities. There is an integration. There is areas where there's a criticism, of the work done. But there's also an area where there's complementarity, and so on and so on. That's what you do. You're becoming scholarly, because now you are able to see who agrees with you, who does not agree with you, and who then sort of disagree with you. Now, at some point, when we look at instruments of measurement, you're going to see that actually when you complete a questionnaire, some of which I know you throw in the bin because, research is such a boring environment, and somebody says, do you agree with me? Yes, I do, but I do agree with you maybe strongly, or I just agree with you, or I disagree with you, or I disagree with you quite strongly. Now, or I don't know where I stand. Now, those are just degrees that are going to be very important when you look at measurement. So whether you agree or you disagree, or you agree strongly or you disagree strongly, you are actually just demonstrating the degree of which you measure and of which you needs to be measured. I sometimes hear people say they disagree violently with you on your point, and that I think is it's just to demonstrate that I do disagree, and my level of disagreement or my degree so violent that you and I will never agree. So those are important considerations in research that you are also building in as part of science. So we will when we get to those, we will discuss, because as I said, those are now the instruments that you use to measure that what is the level of agreement. Is normal agreement, or you disagree strongly, or maybe you agree, or you agree strongly. So all those are considerations that I'm saying. When you look at the literature, you also have to come to a point where you say, I have read these sources that agree, but you also have to read, because you also need balance. You may also have to read sources that may not necessarily agree, just so that you are able to bring balance to the work that you do. Because it's not that you must always agree with everything. You can also differ, not for the sake of it, but because you can see that there's a body that of knowledge that is being built for differing with a view that is already. I mean, it might just as well be everybody agrees with it, but you are the only one who disagrees with it, and you've got your own reasons why you do so. So it's if you look at the literature review, really, we look at it as an integrated analysis of what is known. So you basically tell us this is what is already known. So this is known, and this is the current state of knowledge. So you say this is what we all know. So from this that you all know, this analysis, I'm able to pick up that this area or that area or those areas or these fields, whatever it is, needs to be studied a little bit further. So that's what you do when you look at the literature review. Now, if somebody walks into your house and say, look, I am required to conduct literature review. No, not theoretically, but practically. The question is, how do you then assist that person to take steps? Because it's very easy to sit together now and talk about the theories, the theoretical way of doing it. But there's also the difference in terms of steps that you can follow, because it's always important to take real practical steps about it. Now, I'm providing you with this as guidelines, but please use any literature sources that you find easy to use. But I always find it that if you don't talk about something more practical, then whatever we are discussing is theoretical. So you're sitting at home right now, you're watching TV. I don't know what are your favorite things that you do. Now you realize that I actually have to conduct literature review. Now the question is, what does that mean? Now this is just to assist really in trying to figure out what that means. The first thing is, we tried it again last week, is that you need to identify keywords. Now, keywords, for example, in the earlier conversation will be youth, as a word. I mean, you need to know what is youth. You need to know where to start, your point of departure. Identify keywords. And keywords, of course, may emerge in identifying your topic or may result from preliminary reading. So as you read a little bit, because you have, when you get to a topic, sometimes you find yourself reading a little bit. Now, already you're picking up words that you could use. And those can be keywords that you're going to build your literature review around. So keywords, very, very important. And of course, when you are home, you can use your computer to search databases. Now, the big libraries like UNISA and them do have, do support, as we said, a lot of databases, because those are databases that are found to be more support, on the level of academic work. We tried last week, we used Google Scholar. There are those who use some of this. As I said, I prefer Google Scholar because, it doesn't have a lot of licensing difficulties, that the other sites, may require. But for you, remember, you can have access to them because I think they're already part of the package that you can get in a good library, or I don't know how it gets, you can access it from, because it's already been paid for by the university, for example, EBSCO, ProQuest, JSTOR. But there are also other specific databases that are particular on a particular discipline like your ERIC, your sociophile, or your PsycInfo. Those are sites that you use to get journals, material information that you can use to get more information. Now you need to get some reports or research articles or books that are now going to relate to your topic. So when you walk in the library, you now know what you're looking for. I'm looking for anything that talks to youth in general, but 20 to 30 years in particular, because maybe that's where you're focusing at. So you walk in there, you can also compare youth and elderly people or young people, whatever the case might be, because perhaps you want to give an understanding of, broader understanding so that somebody understand that you can, differentiate and associate and identify the youth from everybody else. That's fine. Then you determine whether they exist in academic library. So the material that you are looking for, now you look at where to find it. Wherever you then have to find it, that's where you get it. Now, the first thing you do, if you're sitting at home and you've got boxes and databases and so on, I would imagine you're going to skim from the initial group of articles. Look at them and say, okay, I'm sitting with 2,000 articles here. Which ones are more central to my topic? So you start, just in a way, it's almost like sifting through, that maybe this one, I can see it talks about what is happening in China, but maybe not now. This one perhaps talks about what is happening in the Oval Office, or, maybe not now. All those you are a researcher. So you're beginning to say, which of the material am I going to use? Because now what are you doing? You're designing for yourself a literature map. So basically it's like a visual picture that illustrates how your particular study will add to the existing literature. So you're beginning to say, I'm going to use this material, maybe local, maybe national, maybe international, whatever. You're putting it just visually. And then you begin to draft summaries of the most relevant articles. So, these articles are relevant. They are new as in 2025, maybe lower down to 2020, whatever the case might be. So you are able to now identify those recent, fresh articles that you're going to do. And then we say, then you assemble your literature review. You start saying, this is who defines, according to this and this and that, is defining youth this way, starting to structure it thematically, definition, maybe overview, perhaps specific nuances that you're picking up from the material. So you are already beginning to organize your work according to the important concepts. And then, of course, you can complete or end your review with a summary of the major themes that these are the themes that are coming out of the work that I see from the literature that I'm reviewing. And then you can suggest how your study, now in other words, how your work will further add to the literature and how it's going to address gaps if they exist in those themes. That yes, I have now figured it out, this is what it is, but I've looked at that, the point where the issue or the aspect of youth perhaps is not being understood outside this environment. This is just an example, ladies and gentlemen. So what have you done? You are now able to bring all this information together. You're organizing it. You're correctly referencing, you're citing correctly, and then you say, this is how my information or my research will add value. In other words, this is how you will benefit from your research. And of course, this is the gap that it will address. Then that is how we think you do literature review. I'm not sure whether it's helpful in terms of just the steps, but you don't have to follow those steps mechanically. All it does is there is the way within which you have to get information from sources that you then put it together so that it makes sense. Then you give the material back because you've cited it correctly, referencing it correctly, and it has given you an understanding of the phenomenon that you are studying.
Good evening, Prof. At this stage, nothing much, but I must say that I did struggle with understanding what is literature review. It took me a while, but yeah, for now, I think I'm on the right track.
You think you're on the right track. What
Yes.
were you struggling with in the main, if we were to share with
I
others who
didn't
are
know
still
how
going to
I
go
was
through it?
going to put it into my proposal.
The integration, you mean? How do you
Yes,
integrate it into?
integration. Yes.
What was difficult? What is the difficulty?
I thought that I was expected to do a comparison right there and there
Okay.
of whatever that I've found, instead of just maybe doing it at the end and just gathering information first.
What do you mean? Gathering information first? I'm not sure. I follow.
What I did was that in my proposal, there was no structure. There was no correct structure. Yes, it was just information here and there. So there was no structure as to how I should do things. And my lecturer kept on saying, no, where's your literature review? You should have your literature review.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when you then, when they said, where is the literature review? What then did you do?
I then started doing research on my topic, and then I started summarizing whatever that I've read.
Oh, okay.
And then put in contrast between what I've previously read and what I'm reading. And sometimes you find that actually I thought that I had something constructive, but it was not.
Oh, okay. Now, are you able to, from what we just engaged, and what you've done right now, with that experience, because that's the best way to figure it out. Are you beginning to, is it making sense, or where are you in terms of what we just shared and what you've done, and from where you were?
I think I'm getting there because sometimes you find that I do my research and my summaries, but then when I research more, I find the other literature that I summarized not so relevant, and then I had to, so I'm getting there.
So what kind of material, in other words, the literature review, what were you using in the main to get the relevant material for use in the literature when you're conducting the review?
I was using, hey, you know what? This is so embarrassing, but I think also I was using wrong sources. I didn't know about Google Scholar. So I was just fishing.
It's not embarrassing. I mean, if it opens eyes, it's good, isn't it? If it opens, if something opens your eyes from where we always, we started somewhere and then we got better. So, but then were you using, it sounds like it was electronic internet in the main.
Yes.
Were you using any particular site that you were using, or it was just random?
I was using Safi. Yeah, I was using mainly Safi and the UNISA library research.
Oh, okay. Were you using books, articles, what reports or what?
Articles, books, reports, case law.
So it's a combination.
It was just a mix. It was a combination.
Good. So if you were to do it again, if you were to be asked to do it again, would you do the same or would you do it differently?
I think I would do it differently. I wouldn't rush to finishing. It's something that one must really take time on it. Okay. Because you find that there are recent reports, case laws, and I read something that happened long time ago. So it's a process. It's not something that needs to be rushed because that's the gist of your research.
Thank you very much, Thuli. So are we on the right track right now with what we are talking about, or are we really just off the mark completely?
No, we are on the right track.
Are we on the right track? Oh, thank you. Because I see
Yes.
Angelique's hand is up, so we don't want to lose them and say, well, I thought we are actually going to be doing the right thing, but I can see we are derailed, by the PRASA standards. Angelique, what is bothering you? Well, maybe not bothering you, you're just happy.
No, I'm not
bothered.
There's no emotion. I guess what I want to see clarity on is, and I often get confused here. So you would do a literature review and you would have maybe an opinion. To what extent should we discuss that under literature review?
Repeat that. You'll do. You said you'll do.
Your opinion. So, as in your opinion.
Oh, your own opinion.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So I often get lost in one. To what extent I should express myself in terms of the literature I've read and the literature review, as opposed to expressing it when you are doing the discussion.
Well, how do you normally do it?
That's why I'm asking, because I'm not sure where should it be extensively done under literature review, or when you are now actually writing out your under the discussion, or addressing your issues.
Look, I'm not going to be helpful much, but I can share what I think could be done, so that at least there is an option for you to apply different standards. For example, if you take, let's take a first thing on the identification, let's say, of themes, that the first thing is introduction, right? You may probably just do your own introduction of the problem as a beginning, where you say, this is what I see as a problem, but later on, perhaps you can back that up with information. You agree, like sources, right? Then let's say, then you move into, let's just use definition that we used earlier. Now, those definitions, you use sources, as we said. I mean, like, this is how it's been defined, and by various sources. You can then, at the end of it, say, although these definitions you have noted them, you agree with them, they're empirical. You would, for your sake, now this is where you come in and say, so basically you are acknowledging that you are not the source of the information, but your understanding then is that for your purpose, this is how you're going to define you. So you need to always say, citing sources, and you can then throw in your own understanding there. But your own understanding should not just be to always agree, disagree, but you could also use the totality of the understanding of the area that you are looking into and say, although this is what is happening, I feel and I think that there are gaps in this in the following way. So what are you doing? You're acknowledging the sources or that you are referring to, but then you're also bringing in your own understanding in there. Does it make sense?
I think I still am a bit confused, because so
let's take the definition example. I'm saying you define youth as anything between 0 to 35. Right? This is a source. You're defining the legal age of the young or the youth as 12 to 21. That's another source, isn't it?
Yes.
You define a youth as anybody between 18 to 35. That's a source. You define youth as anything between 20 to 35. So how many sources are we using here of the definition of youth? I've got 4. Do you understand? Does it make sense? I've got 4. And they are as contrasting each other as they are complementing each other. What brings them all together? There's a 0 to 35, there's a 12 to 21, there's a 18 to 35, there's a 20 to 35. What is your view about all this? These are sources. This is not you defining them. How do you how do you speak and how do you reflect that? What would you say? I'm giving you 4 sources: 0 to 35, 12 to 21, 18 to 35, 20 to 35. What is your own observation of that?
Yeah, okay. So so in terms of the structure of the research proposal, right, you would be discussing those definitions under literature review.
Yes.
But
you're getting this information from sources. So in other words, these are 4, I'm giving you 4 different sources. All of them, all these sources are 2025, right? So they are recent, but they're 4 sources. So I'm saying, what do you reflect? How is your reflection of these 4 sources of defining the same phenomenon, which is youth? They're all defining youth. Where am I losing you, Angelique, with this example?
Okay, so under literature review, you would discuss, right? So you would lay out the research, those 4 definitions, and your opinion would be this definition, you agree more with this definition for whatever reason. But when you are discussing your main themes, so if, for example, you say...
No, but you just said it. I mean, this is important what you said in literature. You say, I have looked at the 4 definitions, because I don't want you to move and complicate the understanding. You're saying you now have taken note of the 4 definition, and you want to see the one that you agree with more with your own reasons, isn't it? Isn't that your reflection now of your own views?
Yes.
You are now saying, I have taken note of the 4 definition, but I seem to be more... You are now saying, for your own, I mean, we're talking definition, but it could also be a theoretical discussion. You are now saying you're leaning more maybe with the 18 to 35, I don't know. Because remember, it's not just a definition as a one line. It will be an understanding of why are we having 18 to 35 and why are we... So you are reading, it's material that you are reading on 0 to 35, 18 to 35. So as you're reading, you then begin to say, you leaning towards. Now that leaning towards, it's you as a researcher. I mean, Shamida might have a different leanings than you have. So you are already saying, I agree with so and so in that regard. Both of them are 2025, and then you say my reasons are. Isn't that your own view in that understanding?
Yes.
So your view at that moment is coming out. You are saying, I read 4. So what have you done? You have acknowledged the 4 you've read. You appreciate the understanding. Then you say, but for your sake, you are going to be looking more into 18 to 35, and then you explain why. As you explain, you're explaining because now it's your own understanding. But you are not disregarding those that have given a different view of the same. I mean, it could be a view. We are just using definition just to simplify this conversation. But it's your view. So all you say is that as a researcher, I am going to use 18 to 35 because I feel it talks more to you, what you're doing, or it relates closely to whatever. So you've got your reasons. That's your view. That's your personal view. That's you making sense of what you have read. Okay, let's see if we can use maybe a different example if this doesn't work. Who do we pick to? Alan, I think you are top on the list because of your alphabetical order. Are you able to give a simpler or another way of helping Angelique on this one? You're very close to Angelique on my list. So basically you're neighbors. Is there anything that you feel you could perhaps use to amplify the point? We don't want there to feel, I'm still not convinced.
Okay, in terms of literature review, not to be directly responding to Angelique, so the way I approach it is that, for example, let me use an example of a proposal. The first thing I would do is you have your topic. And once I have the topic, what I've learned the hard way is that you need to be very specific to your topic. For example, you used the example of youth earlier. One of my previous proposals, if I can remember correctly, it was dealing with the life sentence, where people, can be hanged and things like that. So the way I approach the entire thing, Prof. and colleagues, is that I'm very specific in terms of what my introduction is. But in my introduction, I kind of lean towards already what my opinion on the matter is. And then obviously you go down your template, all your subheadings, but then I choose sources that are relevant to the question. For example, if any lecturer says, consult your legislation, so obviously it will be South African law, consult international law, then you'd look beyond our borders, and constitutional law, which goes without saying. So then I look for especially cases or material or any other researchers' papers that were published. And then I take sort of like, not an extract, but a summary of what their opinion was. Like you get a long summary and short summary of a court case. So I take a short summary of the material that I'm going to use. And then at the end of that's the proposal, and then which I expand later on. I'm not sure if I'm making any sense on that one.
Yeah. But then how do you integrate your own views into it?
Oh, yes. What I do, Prof, I don't even know whether that's actually a wise thing, but I do it. It's kind of my thing, if I can use the term.
Yeah, it's fine. Please go ahead.
Let's say even we've gone beyond the proposal. Now you're submitting a paper or a portfolio. I say, Prof, so-and-so has said this with reference to this, refer to a case or whatever. But before I move on to my next point, I say, but in my opinion, I disagree, and, give my opinion on the matter. And but then I don't just give an opinion which is subjective. I give an opinion based on, with reference to this case, I'm in agreement on the judgment of that case. I'm not sure if I'm making sense, Prof.
Yeah, you are. Thank you. So basically, you first acknowledge, and then you say, in my opinion, this maybe is incorrect, or maybe this is not sufficient, or this is maybe, correct to an extent that you are. So at least you say, in my opinion.
Yes, I do.
So anybody who reads that work will realize that for that moment, that is your opinion, but you have acknowledged the work that has been done by others. Am I correct in saying that?
100%. And my last point, I'm going to use a very silly example. To go back to school history, we learned about, who discovered this continent, who discovered this country. And there's one thing I loved history. So they say who discovered America, and they say Christopher Columbus. But then, as I started studying to my LLB and getting to masters now, I realized, but no, you know what? You can give, let's say we write on Americas, a paper on Americas, and then the facts, yes, but Christopher Columbus, whatever. But then if I have to, I'll say, in my opinion, I disagree with that because they were native Indians or Native Americans, whatever, already there. And we're not sure they got there, where they came from. So you can't say you discovered. You can say, yes, Christopher Columbus came to America and he discovered these people living in America. And then that's the sort of approach I use to my work.
Thanks, Alan. Angelique, does it make sense this far? Need another, or are you following now? Angelique, are you being assisted?
Perhaps let me try and clarify the question a bit more. If, let's say, for instance, the topic was youth and drugs, just a silly example, right? And the literature review, yes, you would give it various definitions of youth. You would also do analysis on drugs. Now, let's say as part of your research, you would have gone and done surveys, interviews, whatever. When you are discussing the results, will there be a point where what you have raised under your literature review will be replicated there
Oh,
under your
yes.
result?
No, of
Or
course.
yeah. That's
No,
what I'm
remember.
asking.
Oh, okay. Now maybe that's a different. Can we add that as another different discussion on literature, right?
Okay.
So what you have done, remember, you do literature review up front, isn't it? Isn't it you do literature review before you go and collect data? Can you agree on that at least?
Yes.
Okay. So now, when you do literature review, you're putting in everything else, then you go out, you collect data, you analyze data. You do have an opportunity where you're going to integrate what you found with the literature review, of course. It's expected. So you'd say, this is what I found, and does that then sort of, go together with what is within the research space that you've been to? Is there any contradiction? Is there any complementarity? So you're able to now say, yes, there's a correlation, which is also supported empirically by the research that was done. Now you can also use the literature review information that you have done and to sort of, back up your findings, or maybe to contradict the findings, or whatever the case might be. Because remember, at the end of the day, when you look at your research, you're also testing the hypothesis, whether there's any merit in saying that, and maybe the findings are different. So you can actually argue against the body of knowledge that already exists, that there's no relationship between youth and the use of drugs and whatever the case might be. How do you know that? You have now collected data. You have used the right instrument. You have actually selected from the right population. And so all those technicalities you have done. So you are able to do that in your literature. So you can integrate literature with the findings as just as part of your research. That's basically what you are doing when you do research. Or you can just confirm the strength of whatever else that exists already. Does it make sense? Are we now helping a little bit?
Very happy. Thank you.
Okay. So yes, at the end of the day, you'd say, I was focusing on the ages 20 to 30 because that's your operational definition of the youth. And those are the ones that you sampled in your research, and you went out, you collected data from them. Now, you are also going to tell us what kind of drugs, for example, are they using, because that could only relate to that cohort. It might be different from the kind of drugs that are used by people outside that age group and so on. So you're just putting that together and say, what does research say? Is there any body of work that has been done to that community that you're able to rely on? Or has there been a gap that nobody ever done research in that area? Therefore, you are relying more on the generic work that could have been done by others. But at the end of the day, it is you now as a researcher must actually demonstrate that element of correlation if it does exist. So that's the point. I think we that's the point we're trying to emphasize on literature review, and I hope everybody's getting the drift about it. Last week, what we did, ladies and gentlemen, we tried to use the size to minimize difficulties of citation. It's important in research. There's nothing as important and as crucial as referencing, and in academia, it's a big issue, referencing. I know in other spaces, there's a lot of relaxation about it and so on. But please remember, you need to be clear with your lecturer as to which referencing style they use. What I love with the sites, the internet sites, is that now you no longer use the old style where you have to type and write by hand. You can actually just use the electronic system to cite. Now there are different citation or styles that you can use. So just be familiar with the one that we use. I know that the Harvard one is very popular, and the APA. I don't know what referencing style you use. But it's important to know the referencing style. But you can't use two different referencing style in one information. You have to use the style that is acceptable in your space. I'm not going to be bothering you on those because I think it's more to do with your particular institution and your supervisor. But it's important to know the style, referencing style that you use, so you stick to it. Now, referencing is important, but let's just look at one or two things about technical referencing. Sometimes you use a book, you have not done the referencing, you gave it back, and then you realize later on that, oops, I actually don't remember what the book is. You can't use that information unless you're sure of the referencing. This is the technical details that are very important when you do literature review. Why is this important? Why is the referencing, the correct referencing, technical referencing so important, if I may ask? Why is it important that we should be meticulous in referencing work that we do as researchers? Anyone is an open mic. If you are able to unmute, you can just give an answer. Otherwise, we then have to go into the random selection again. Anybody who can tell us why is the referencing such a life and death in academia?
If I may offer, Prof, I'm not sure if I'm correct, but I thought it's to prove authenticity of the work and to acknowledge others, to avoid plagiarism.
To avoid plagiarism, yes, and acknowledge other people's work sufficiently. So basically, you are not misleading anybody. You're right, Kokes. You're not misleading anybody to think and believe that this is your original work. You're actually saying, I love it, and I'm aware that it was done by somebody else. So I'm acknowledging that person. So you're right. Absolutely correct. Anybody else who wants to add to that? I don't see anybody. But let's now let's just try to see, how to do it. And again, this is just an intro, but you have to, go deeper into it and really understand referencing, because it is the most tedious but the most important part of the work that we do. As I said, in academia is a big issue. The sources that are in the list of references are done alphabetically. If you look at most of the research work that you can refer to, you'll find that we're using alphabetical order, not numbering. So there's no 1, 2, 3 up to 2,000 or 200 sources. They are being done alphabetically. And they're also given in the language of the source itself. So if somebody writes in English or in any other, so you'll find that it's been used in those languages. Now, for example, if you use German book, for example, you'll use the title in German, but of course with the English translation in square brackets. There's a difference between square brackets and other brackets. Now again, in academia, you don't just throw things. It's not for the beauty of it. It's actually why you're doing it. So other people would prefer maybe, not square brackets, but something else. Now, that's not how it works in academia. The rules are established already. So it's in square brackets, and maybe you can put a place of, not maybe, and you put a place of publication. Now, if you are using it in the original language, you may find that then you have to use German, not, English. However, you are allowed to translate in English, but the translation has to be in brackets. So you're not going to speak like open quotes, close quotes. I'm sure that you hear politicians speaking like that most of the time, that open quotes, close quotes. I always find that quite smart. It's like, when you speak like that, it's really very nice. I don't know what you think, but I always hear them saying open quotes and they'll go close quotes. Of course, you won't necessarily find references at the end of their work, even if they were quoting in any way. Place of publication, very important. Where was it published? In Pretoria or where? And it's followed by a colon, then the publisher's name. Now, I know some of these rules, like, at home when you talk about colon, and sometimes a colon is a comma, so it's like it doesn't matter. It does matter in academia. A colon is not a comma, and so on. So just familiarize yourself with those so that you don't lose unnecessary points and marks on it. It's not enough to say, yeah, but I've quoted it and it's done. No. You have to do it right the first time, get used to it. Now, you do get quite a lot where authors' surnames are the same. Now, they're the same, like we are all Brown and Brown. Now, where you've got those, you can't just then be flippant and say, well, they're both Brown. Whether it's Brown A or Brown B doesn't matter. It does matter that Brown B, because both of them are Brown, will be the first one, followed by Brown D. I'm talking about where there's a multiple surnames in a source. I mean, other books are written by more than 2 authors, So in that event, and if they're not having the same surnames, then it's okay, But if they're same surnames, another one is initial is B, the other one initial is D. B is going to come definitely before D. Small technical details. Now, the author's initials are followed by date of publication. So if I'm Brown, and I'm 1990, that's how it's going to be. So it's the author or authors. You sort out the initials of the author or the authors first, and then you put the year of publication, the date in which the source has been published. Again, that also gives you a sense of how old is the material, because if people start giving us years such as 1947, 1988, you are able to see at a glance that you're relying on older material. It's not wrong in an event that there are no sources, but if there are current sources that you could really use for your work, that may also just tell us a lot about how far and how wide you've gone in your work. All multiple initials are separated by full stop. So if I'm B, it will be a B full stop, and then you put the colon again without any spaces in between. This is just to guide you, but what I'm trying to get to you for you to understand is that there is, and you need to work with the promoter quite a lot there on the correct referencing. Get as much details as possible, yes, but obviously when you get into the engagement and discussion, you're able to say we are using Harvard, for example. Now, example here is that you've got a source that is Barbie, E full stop. The year of the publication is 1990. The title of the book is Survey Research Methods, and it's the 2nd edition. It was published in Belmont. That was in Wadsworth. As an example, we can use another example here where we've got more than one publisher. It's Leedy, PD, as you can see, and Ormrod, JE, and that was in 2005. It was Practical Research, Planning and Design. So that's an 8th edition. Again, where was it published? The date is there and the place is there. Now, the last one as an example, perhaps where we've got the multiple entries for the same author, but with different publication. Then author must be listed by date. So, like, for example, you get people who write many things, but it's one author having written multiple documents that you are referring to. So, for example, if you look at Jones A there, he's got one that is done in 2004, but in 2004 he did another one, but also in 2004 he did another one. So all what you do, you put A, you put B, you put C. When I see that, I'm able to know that this author, although you're citing this author quite a lot, but he has been able to write, in 1 year, maybe published more than those number of sources. Small details, very, very important if you are a student. Now, there are also legislation issues for some of you that are also in the legal space. So you need to understand that the legislation is also being published, but what is important in legislation is always the place. Like for example, in South Africa, if not all, I haven't been able to check all that, but the majority of the legislation that we're using in the country, they are published in Pretoria in the government printers as a place of publication. Now, if I look at the source reference in the text, now we're talking about in the actual text when we say according to this. So this is how we would like to see it. You indicate it by surname or surnames of the author. So it will be, for example, Nkosi as an author and the year of publication, where the reference is cited. You can also use the page number. For example, if you look at this one, where it's as an example, you've got Nkosi published in 2005. This is now in the text. And what page number is page 4? So when I go to Nkosi 2004-5 and I go to page 4, I need to see that which you are citing. If I don't find it, then there's a problem, because basically it's a reference that you're giving, but it's not correct. Or you can use, Nkosi, but then you can see there's no comma between the 2005 and 4. So that you can use easily. So that's important, ladies and gentlemen, when you do literature review, you can have all those difficulties and everything else, but the most important part of it, and you understanding and using your own opinions and stuff, is the referencing. So when you get that right, really, this is the exercise that we are talking about. Now, let's just pause here because I want to use this to discuss the use of et al. There is this word that you see there, it's use et al. When is it the right time to use that?
For me, I think you use et al. When there is more than one author. Maybe it's like 3 authors who wrote the book, and maybe their names are long, or there's a lot of other authors. I think it's used when there's more than 3 or more authors of the same source.
Okay, you are right, but when do you use it? You use it. Are you saying you are only using it when there is more than one source? Is it the only?
No, not the source, but the actual authors. Let's say 5 authors wrote the same book.
Yes.
Yes. So when I'm referencing within the text, I can say, let's say it's Sonanja as an example to say, so Sonanja in his book, Sonanja and others, so et al. State this, and that. But when you're actually writing the actual citation, it has to be all of them in full on your footnotes.
Okay, you are right, but there's something that you've missed there. More than 3 authors, yes. More than 2 authors, many authors, you can use it. But I'm missing one aspect of it. You can use it if there's more than one author. What I'm missing one element of it that is also very important. Which one is it? Are you able to retrace your steps?
I think you write it within the actual text and not on the referencing in the footnotes.
Yes, you write on that point as well. But there's a step that I'm also missing. You write it, you don't write it in the reference, you only write it in the text. You also write there. There's a step that I'm missing.
Okay, maybe you write the first author and then the et al. Comes after mentioning one author.
Exactly. No, not one author. You write all of them in full first.
Yes.
You're getting that, right? So the first time I write all 18 of you in full, like you are all authors. The first time I use it, I write all of you. But after then, the first time I can use et al. Are you getting that?
Yes, I get that problem.
And you are in agreement, I suppose, right? That yes, the first time there are many, you write all the many. and then later on you use one and then you apply et al.
Yes,
You
yes, that
agree?
is clear. I agree.
Okay. What does then et al mean? What does it represent?
I think it's Latin for and others.
Yes, basically you are acknowledging that you are not the author alone. Yes. There's many of us. So if you don't mention them the first time, then you can't use et al. We agree, right?
Yes, I agree, Prof.
Okay, thank you for that. I think that's the correct way. Now look at your own work where you've got more than 2 sources, where you mention all 3 of them, and check if you keep on writing all 3 of them when the easier way could be Israel et al. But you can't talk about Israel et al. At the beginning, and you are right also that at the end of it, in the reference, you don't use et al. The reference is full. So you got all those 3 aspects correct for me. This is important for you, ladies and gentlemen, because you read sources, you will be able to come across 2 or more sources that you are not going to keep on writing all of them when you could apply et al. In the text, not in the referencing. So first time, full details, and then after that you can use it. Shamida, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Prof. Sorry, just a question on this, please. As an example, if you have a first edition of a, let's just say, contemporary company law written by Rihanna Kassim, and there were 5 or 6 other authors of different chapters on the first edition. Then you have a second edition of the same named textbook, contemporary company law, and you're referencing both of them whilst you're having this discussion. However, the second edition also written by Rihanna Kassim, the second person, and then different names. How would you reference, there's 2 editions, both of them, the first name is Rihanna Kassim, but you have 2 separate editions that you're talking about.
And then the year, what is the year of the publication of the edition? Same or different year?
Yes, okay. So if I'm talking about the first edition, let's just say which was published in 2006, and then the second edition published in 2012, for example. So in my text, whilst I'm writing, if I want to refer to the first edition with that group of persons as opposed to the second edition, which came out in 2012, how would I then separate the 2 to say Rihanna et al? Would I then put comma
it will
first
be the
edition?
Year. Remember, you're using the year now because you are saying,
right.
If you say Rihanna 2012 and Rihanna 2016, even if 2006, yes. Even if you say et al, you still have to put the year. So then we know which Rihanna you are referring to.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
But you must also understand that there's another way of referencing, which we are not going to discuss now, where you number them. So that number would represent, for example, maybe Rihanna 2006 would have been number 4. So every time I see 4, I know which one is it. And then the next one, maybe it's Rihanna number 6. So, but what makes it easy is that even if it's et al on both instances, 2006 and 2012 will be what you are putting in the text.
In the context. Understood.
Yeah.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. So, but remember, as we're saying, everybody, no et al in the list of your reference when you do literature review. So we shouldn't see et al there. Et al only applies in the text. What is in the text as well must be in the reference. So you can't have a reference in the text that you don't see in the referencing. I like the fact that now the computers are able to do this for you because they also do citation and referencing as well. Of course, you have to just get to know it manually before you start applying computers, because it might just cause so much confusion if you don't understand what's going on there. But yes, you were right that this is how we do it, and hopefully we'll see a lot of improvement in that regard. Now, this is with regard to et al. As we were saying. So we're going to leave that because it's really covered. Secondary referencing. I think last week we had a discussion about the difference between secondary and primary referencing. Secondary referencing, for example, I see here Morrison 1998 is cited in Prinsloo 2001. What does that mean? Which one is secondary and which one is primary? If I look at this, if I'm still sharing my slide, you see there it says, for example, Morrison 1998 is cited in Prinsloo 2001. Which one is primary and which one is secondary, and why do we say that? Tagalani, I'm not sure whether today you have spoken. I've got two sources there. Which one is primary and which one is secondary?
Morrison is secondary because it says they as cited in Prinsloo, in my view.
So what would you do in this context? If you're confronted with a Morrison 98 cited by Prinsloo 2001 to make the source primary, what do you do?
Well, you're going to have to obviously cite Morrison properly, in my view.
You're right. You're actually right. Because if there is anything that Prinsloo 2001 cited incorrectly, right, as a secondary source, it means you are also going to continuously cite the source incorrectly.
That's correct.
So if you were to go then to the primary source, you might actually find that that which Prinsloo says is the page number for Morrison might actually not be the page number. And that might just make it difficult for you to keep on getting authenticity and credibility for your research. So if you can, just use primary source, because then you can go to that primary source and say, let me see what Morrison said. Spelling wise, sometimes, Prinsloo might have made some adaptation, changing this, changing that, and so on. So it's important and advisable for you, ladies and gentlemen, and I agree with you, Lionel, that where you can then leave the secondary source and go to the primary source.
What we do in case when we do legal work as well, and when they do that in judgments, then we also pull out the judgment and make it primary. But what we will say in our script, for instance, or we call it our heads of argument, then we'll say, in this case, there was reference to this case. That's all. That's where it stops. We don't say as cited and all that. We'll just say as there was reference to that case, and then we'll bring, let's say, if it is Morrison now, for instance, then Morrison will be our primary source, because I, for instance, will go and look at the primary source and look what is written in there, because there's another problem. You mentioned quite an interesting thing. The page number might be wrong. So in case law, for instance, and this is maybe will help those of you that are actually going to use case law as well. Be careful on the citations, because there are neutral citations for case law. And similarly, it will happen if you most probably have the same with your books. I think last week you showed us the different citations of Harvard and whatever. Similarly, the same will happen here with this, depending, obviously. I think you mentioned earlier now when I came in, you also mentioned you might have to decide which referencing style you're going to use and discuss it with your supervisor. So it can become a problem if you don't do it right. But that's what we do with our case law. We also pull out the primary source from it, and then we just say, though it was mentioned in such and such. Because here they say as cited in Prinsloo, then you can just say, yeah, it was mentioned in Prinsloo as well, for instance. This is just my take on it.
Yeah. The good thing is, and we all have to agree, the good thing is if you can rely on primary source, then there would be fewer errors than when you rely on secondary sources. But for academic work, it's also important for you to, if you can, and where it's possible, to rely on primary sources, because academia put a lot of emphasis on primary sources as well. So yeah, that's the point on secondary sources. Thanks, Lionel. Is there any question? I think there was a question by, I can't remember who it was, on the use of secondary or tertiary sources even. If you are still the one that asked this question, let us know if there's anything we can do. We're talking secondary sources. Now you can imagine if we're talking tertiary sources, which is another level, far away from the primary source. Is the student still on this platform on the tertiary use of Colbert? What do you think about the use of primary, secondary, and tertiary sources? What is your understanding then? Just basic understanding of primary, secondary, and tertiary sources. If you were to just share with your friends tomorrow about the source of information, is it primary, is it secondary, or is it tertiary? Where do you stand?
I will give an example in relation to maybe in the Faculty of Law as a student. Let me say maybe I'm writing an essay or assignment, and then on my analysis I'll say in such a case, the High Court in Johannesburg citing another source. In that instance, I will be on a tertiary level. Then the sources that I will be referring to will be secondary, also citing the primary, what will be the initial source.
Okay. So would you then suggest for you that if you were to, somebody citing you and you're getting cited secondary source, what would you rather have in your environment between or amongst primary, tertiary, and secondary?
Like you've indicated, Prof, I think it is best to consult the primary source, because we are normally advised not to refer to sources that we never consulted.
Yeah. Well, it's preferable, you're right, to rely on primary source if you can, because then you will, as you said, you will strengthen your own research work, but also you'll improve the quality of the work over and above eliminating error. So you may have fewer errors at that point. So yes. So for this purpose of literature review, ladies and gentlemen, I'm saying, please, where you can, use primary source. Hear it from the source. Don't rely on what the next person said. And I used that example just now of Morrison and Prinsloo. So hopefully it's hitting home. Use primary sources. There is also information that we use from the internet. Again, remember, this is a guide. It's a guide as in you need to be guided by your promoter on what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. So don't just take it as gospel. Just understand that you could be guided on how to use it. Now, let's use it. Internet. I mean, there's nothing wrong with using internet. It's actually the way to go now. So we all use internet. Now, in the internet, what you do, if you've got a document, or a report that you're interested in, you also have to look for an author who wrote it or which organization did put it on the website. So there's nothing wrong with it. So you find it, you just need to know who wrote it or which organization. Then you have to establish the date for when it was downloaded as a document or when it was published in that space. If the date is known, then you use the abbreviation SA. Sorry. I'm misleading you now. There are documents that the dates are unknown. That's what I wanted to say. So if the date is unknown, I mean, it doesn't mean you cannot use a document whose date is unknown. You can reference it. Now, technically, you can just use the abbreviation this is the document titled so and so, the Zondo Commission report. What is the date? Is unknown. So what is the date then? Is SA. Now look at it that way. It's SA. That means date of the publication of the document that I'm referring to is unknown. Again, you don't have to be sitting with 20 sources in your literature with dates unknown, because then it is beginning to develop a pattern. Why are you relying a lot more on reports and articles and sources that dates are unknown? It's just to say, in an event that you get confronted with that problem. Or it could be that no place of publication, they don't say Pretoria or New York or something. So the place is unknown. Now you can also use the simple SL. Now when we see that, it's like, okay, you've got the document, you've gone through it, it is there, but you don't know where, the place within which it was published. So it's acceptable, it's allowed. But as I said, I mean, surely you are not going to be sitting with sources that are, dates are unknown, or places of publication are unknown in the majority. You can then indicate the title of the document, a publisher, e.g., for example, you get your Consumer Goods Council of South Africa. It's a report that you read about maybe the challenges, the problem, the legal issues around consumers in South Africa, and there's no place of publication that is there, unless it's indicated in the downloaded document. Then you can put that date. Now, when you type in, I think next time maybe we should do a practical example of available at. So when you go to that window, it will say it's available at, and it's followed by the URL for the downloaded document. So that is the reason why you see a lot of documents that are downloaded will have the URL address, and then that will also show when it was downloaded. Now, and again, we are saying it's you can use these sources, and it depends on the volume. But obviously, as you say, if they start coming like that you've got difficulties with dates, then you don't use a lot of them. And of course, this is then followed in brackets with the terms accessed on. Now, I need to know, when did you access this Consumer Council report of South Africa report? Now, if it's today, it will say it was on the 27th of May, 2025, and it was maybe at 7:15. Somebody will access this document following from what you say, is accessing it on the 28th or maybe 2 years down the line. So that's why when you look at the documents that are more accessed on the URL, they will say it was accessed today at this time. So when you click on it, I'm going to go straight into that document. But if I click on it and I start seeing pictures of the President of the Republic of South Africa and the USA, yet it was about the Consumer Goods Council, then there is a problem with that reference document. We use the colon after at, so it's accessed at, and then there's a colon, not a comma, and on. That's followed by the date, and so on and so on. So when you write the date, I mean, you can write, like today, 27 May 2025, or you can format it as in, the 6.3, as you can see there. It's just these technical details that are very, very important, ladies and gentlemen. And now, if you're going to use much as in words, that means everywhere where you are going to be accessing documents, you're going to use words. You don't have to, you can't use words, then the next thing you use, it's letters. That's inconsistent. So you just have to be consistent in how you're going to do that. This is what you are doing. Really, research is just about hiding what you know and making it technical. And once you figure out the technical way of doing it, you can do anything about it. So if for example, I mean, this is important. If you use available, can you see that available has got a cap? So it's A is cap. But if you use accessed, because you can access it or it can be available at. So if you access is lowercase that you can use. There's no full stop after the URL address and so on. So if you choose to drop the brackets, for accessed, then you using available is just a cap, and so on. Wikipedia, ladies and gentlemen, references. The references in the Wikipedia, you can use them in politics, and with due regard to those of you who are studying politics, I mean politics as in, participating in a political environment. But in an academic space, Wikipedia references are not the primary source for referencing. Therefore, they are not academically accepted generally. And so refrain from using Wikipedia because they are not reputable references. Nothing wrong with them. You are just in an academic space. Remember, it's about systematic observation, control, and replication. So again, it's just to make sure that the academic space, sort of enhances its own integrity and making sure that the standard of your work doesn't drop. So for some of you who are using Wikipedia, it's not to say don't use it. It's just to say remember not to use it within an academic space. Now let's look at a small thing like spelling. In South Africa, you all know we use UK English. So please do spell check. But if you're going to use a computer, the computer might change organization, which is an S, into organization, which is a Z. Now, there's a difference between the US spelling of organization, the UK spelling of organization. Now, if you do research, you may want to start programming your computer on the UK English. But remember, if you are directly quoting a source, then you could use the as in the language as you said. So you can take it as is, but it's obviously something that you're quoting, that it is in that context. But generally, in South Africa, we do use UK English. This is very, very important. We spoke about it earlier. The reason why you are doing all this good work, all this important citation with dates and small details, of course, also putting in your own views, is to deal with this big elephant in the room. So the elephant in the room is plagiarism. So this is the part where I think we should just spend a little bit more time, because part of the literature review, the most important thing that you are dealing with here is to avoid plagiarizing work of other scholars. If you acknowledge, and you acknowledge it sufficiently, it is the beautiful thing that you can ever think about as a researcher. So plagiarism is stealing people's work. Making someone else written work or artistic or other creative work as if it's your own. You can do that in part, or you can do that in whole, without specifying the source or authorship of the original. So when you don't tell us, where do you get this source of inspiration, which is quite good that you are sharing, then you are stealing somebody else's work. So again, I'm not a lawyer. So then I'm just using the word, unlike forgery, in which is questioned the authenticity of the work. Plagiarism is the illegal and unethical copying of another's work, another person's work, a researcher or whatever, which is up at its own. So it is actually a literary term for stealing, copying others' work. And in recent years, we have seen it as a violation of copyright. So generally speaking, plagiarism is when someone uses someone else's idea statements, linguistic styles, and you do not recognize the intellectual author. So that's very, very important for all of you today, that if you steal somebody else's work and you don't realize that this is not your work, that is stealing, that is plagiarism. And it's a big issue now in academic space. I like it because then UNISA has got the tools and the instrument that they now use, the Tenet-Ed and so on, to minimize the level of plagiarism. But again, don't just say if somebody's work is showing high rate of similarities, is plagiarism, because if anybody was to ask all of us here, the first president of 1994, Democratic South Africa, we are more, all of us, likely to say Nelson Mandela. Of course, some people might be wrong and think Jacob Zuma, but you will more likely have a Nelson Mandela. And if you throw all that in the Trinity, it might say, there's a lot of similarities. So students might have actually copied from each other. So it's not just as straightforward as that. That's not what you're talking about. We're saying just be mindful of all that, so that at least when you do literature review, you sufficiently cite and you acknowledge and you put your opinions into that discussion. Then you've got no challenges as to the work that you are doing. How do you think we can minimize plagiarism in the work that we do, especially in research and in the literature review space? Any ideas?
Is to specifically have all the information that you're getting and sourcing from, is to make sure that you sort of accredit the source that you're getting it from, and by all means try to credit the people that has contributed to the work.
Good.
So that's what I normally form, is even if it's a small quotation that I normally source from a source, I always try to credit just to be on the safer side.
Yeah, that's true. Just to credit the source, but also be mindful of the fact that sources that are more to be credited in the main will be primary sources, because it's quite good to do so just as a standard. Now, this crediting of sources, why do you think it's important to give those credit to the source of the information that we are using?
Is to obviously with the systems to give credit to the people that have researched the information and have compiled information, and to associate that source of information is not necessarily coming from you, and that you taken some of the information, or your primary ideas is based on someone else's ideas, or you elaborating on someone else's information that they have provided. So it is critical to sort of credit that the work that someone else has done.
And that obviously, sorry, go ahead.
And obviously that will obviously also build on, and obviously if you also then elaborate and work on and create more additional information, someone else that follows on then creates the scope of the works, then elaborates all that information to a certain extent.
Yeah. Thanks for that. So it enhances also the quality of your own work, because you are actually saying to us, I've read from this, because that's knowledge. You're building knowledge. You're coming up with new theories. So you'd say, yes, this knowledge was built up to this point, and I think this is the point where I come in and I add. So it just creates value in the work that you do, that I'm relying on this source, but I'm also mindful of the fact that there is a gap in that information which I'm filling. So you are able to open yourself to be criticized yourself. In other words, the critiquing, not the criticizing in a negative way, so that at least you are able to say, I built this on top of that. And somebody can look at it and say, well, you got it wrong, because this is how you should have built it. Because that's what makes research a continuous process. So it's important to acknowledge sources sufficiently, ladies and gentlemen. And as I said, instead of worrying about it, it enhances the quality of your work. On the contrary, it's not a bad thing. So even if it's just a piece of a journal that you read and you like something about it, you say, I like this, and therefore I want to use it for my own work, and let me then credit it. Because that's the reason why you like it. You want to acknowledge it and say, I like it, and maybe I'm going to make it better. Okay, so let's conclude then. Why do we cite? In other words, why citation? Why do we cite those sources, primary, secondary, and tertiary? Primary being the first prize. We do so because citing helps to know more about the author's ideas and where they came from. So I need to know, where did you get these ideas? And not all the sources are as good and true. So it also helps us to see that some of the sources that you might have cited are not true. Journals with the high above mentioned indices. So those journals that you know, they give you the higher indices which we are relevant to quote. So as much as you might sit with thousands and thousands of journals, you need to look at those that are good enough, and you determine, obviously working with your promoters, you can determine which journals are good enough. So we're not going to sit here and say, this one is good, that one is bad. All what you're saying is that it's important to cite, and then it helps you, or the reader, to distinguish between the authors and the ideas of others. So I'm able to see your own ideas and those that are others' ideas, and to compare those ideas and to contrast them and actually pick and integrate them in my own work and see how I come in. And of course, the bigger issue is to avoid plagiarism. Now, when you've read enough, you are then able to build what is called an educated guess, which is a hypothesis. So you're able to say, and remember, hypothesis is not a right or wrong, it's an allegation. So you're able to say, I can see that there is this problem that perhaps is common amongst this. So you can put that allegation. You don't have to necessarily be correct at the beginning, but having read, you are now able to establish a hypothesis, which is, as we say in loose terms, it's almost like an allegation that there is this, or there is no relationship, there's no correlation, or there's nothing, and then you go in, you got data, and it confirms the hypothesis. So you can read more, and then after that you draft the hypothesis, because now you've seen what situation obtains relating to your area of investigation or your research area. So I'm going to stop here because I think we have now covered literature review, and we'll move into the next chapter next, and in our next engagement. That then, ladies and gentlemen, summarizes the literature review and the elements such as your referencing, your citation, your how to do it in the text as you do it in the list of references, and the multiple sources as opposed to single sources and so on. We will be coming back to referencing as we go along, because it's not once referencing, it's just as we move around, so that there is sufficient understanding of this important aspect of literature review. But then for the literature review, I think we are sufficiently covered for now, so we can move to the next level.